Welcome to Trust Stories by Relate, a series about real conversations, authentic connection, and what it takes to build trust in the modern world. Each episode, we sit down with leaders, coaches, and changemakers to uncover the pivotal moments that shape them and the lessons they've learned about trust, leadership, and human connection along the way.
Hi, Tom Keenan, co-founder from Relate here. Welcome to the second episode of Trust Stories by Relate. Today, super honored to have Charlie Green on the show. Yes, that is the Charles H. Green, the author of The Trusted Advisor. This is a great episode. We have a broad-reaching conversation about trust, what's changed, why it's harder to build trust in the modern world, and what individuals can do in an age where trust is collapsing, institutional trust in particular is collapsing. So I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with Charlie, and I hope you do too. Charlie, welcome. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. I appreciate it.
Excellent. So I want to start with a question related to obviously the Trusted Advisor, the book that was released. Was it the year 2000 that was released?
It was either 2000 or 2001. I honestly don't remember.
Okay, so around that time. So 25 years ago, nearly 26 years ago. So is trust harder to build today than it was when that book was released? What has happened in the interim?
Well, good question. That's a good intro question. With one exception, and don't let me forget that exception, I say it is more difficult now than it used to be. It is harder for a number of reasons, all of which anybody listening to this could probably add to. But basically, I think it boils down to we used to develop trusted relationships just by walking around and talking to people, constant consanguinity, to use the language of David Hume, the philosopher. You hang around with people all the time, you get to know them, it just happens kind of automatically. We're social animals, we fraternize with other people, you get to develop trust relationships. Well, one by one, that's been chipped away at. The whole world's gone digital. When the book came out, we not only didn't have the internet or Facebook or iPhones or any of that stuff, right? So we had phone calls. Voicemail was a relatively new invention. And, we've got Zoom now, so we disintermediated people. We've got all kinds of mass communications, mass emailing, spam, etc. And it reaches certain levels of absurdity. I'll mention just a couple of months ago, I was doing a webinar for a well-established global professional services firm. They had 300 people on this particular webcast. It was a special event. And I was to talk about forming interpersonal relationships. Now, the way it's set up, 300 people on a webcast, for bandwidth reasons, they didn't want to have everybody's camera on, so everybody's camera's off. And because it's hard managing 300 people, they also muted everybody with the notation that you could come off mute by requesting the system administrator, and then you come off mute. Well, nobody's going to do that. You're sitting around in your bathrobe, drinking your coffee. The last thing you want to do is come on as an anonymous stranger to 300 other people. So it ended up being a monologue. With my hands tied behind me, no visual, no interaction, no auditory response, nothing. And it's laughably, literally absurd. And yet that's the world we live in. So all the easy tools to get there, or many of them, have been taken away. And I think that, add on to that, the experience of COVID in recent memory has served to isolate a whole generation of people. You look at the Jonathan Haidt's book, The Anxious Generation, top of the bestseller list for the last year. It's all about how kids who were raised with protected childhoods and then unprotected from social media, so they become emotionally stunted, and then they get hit with COVID. So there's all kinds of reasons. But to answer your question, yeah, I think it's tougher. But
yeah, you take my mind back to COVID, and I was living in Singapore at the time. And I was working for this Dutch investment management company. And my business model was bringing portfolio managers to the region to do roadshows and raise money. And of course, COVID took all of that away. Yeah. So then everything went online. And the amount of times we would have a group call and get no feedback and then get off get off the call, and then we'd call each other and go, well, I think that went well. What do you think? And we'd
Exactly.
convince each other that, it was a huge success. But
Yeah.
we quickly learned that people just weren't listening. They were
No.
distracted. They were
Yeah.
doing everything but the work we needed them to do to buy our product. And it was a real
Yeah.
conundrum.
Yeah. And I don't want to forget, I mentioned there's one exception to that
Yes.
generalization. And the exception is that the level of bandwidth available, or the level of acumen at creating trust, has gotten so low that it's relatively easy to cut through it with just a little bit of good trust creating behavior, because the quote competition is so low. The bar has been lowered so much that anybody who comes across sincerely, genuinely, in a trust creating way, people go, whoa, that's a standout thing. And that's doable by all of us. Anybody on this call, there are a number of ways you can do that. So if you
Why
kind of get
is
it
that,
right.
Charlie? Is that just related to what you went through before? That the acumen is falling because of all of the technology, I
Well, I think
suppose. That
if you take the technology, all that stuff, it's removed the usual cues that we used to have, the mass social connection, contact, connectivity that we had is gone. And therefore, we have to be a little more conscious and a little more precise about what it is that we're doing. What has not changed is that we're all still very much flawed human beings.
Mm.
We're meat puppets, we're protoplasm entities. We are still social animals. That has not changed in the last 25, 30 years. That hasn't changed in eons. We're still triggered by the same things. We still want the same things as human beings. They're just not as in easily, they're in short supply. But if you can figure out what those things are and how to click through and connect with them, you can do this stuff. And there's very little competition out there because mostly people are not doing it.
Yeah, and so that leads to my next question, which is, what is the one thing, if there is one thing, there might be two or three things, but what is the number one thing that people most often get wrong about trust?
Oh, good question. Well, I'll give you two answers to that. Let me take it up to 30,000 feet level for the first part of it. And we talk about trust and trustworthiness in a fairly casual way, but let me get precise because there's usefulness to it. Let me break it down to three words: trust, trusting, and trustworthiness. Trust, the noun, is the word that we use to describe a form of relationship between two parties, like love or friendship or attraction. It's a noun. It's a name of a relationship. Now, trust, the noun, how do we get to a state of trust between two parties? Well, the two parties play different roles, unlike maybe friendship or love or whatever. There is the trustor and the trustee. There's one who does the trusting, there's one who is trusted. The one, and let's use the verb to trust. One trusts, and the other one is or is not trusted or trustworthy. And the elements of what it means to trust are different than the elements of what it means to be trustworthy. And in any trust relationship, those roles go back and forth. So we have to be good at both. Most of what we talk about is trustworthy, but I don't want to forget the trust part. That's key to your question. What's most important? There's a great saying, which is very, very true. The fastest way to make a man trustworthy is to trust him. And we forget that one of the basic rules of human behavior, even below trust, is reciprocity. We are hardwired to give good for good, bad for bad. We reciprocate in however it's laid out. So you want somebody to behave in a trustworthy way, start by trusting them. The essence of trusting is to take a risk. And, we're all risk averse on some level. But if you're risk averse, if all you do is be trustworthy, you operate on that side, that's a passive set of virtues. It's like aggressively waiting for the phone to ring in the field of sales. It helps, doesn't hurt, but you're not going to generate anything. So if you really want to kick off trust, you need to take the first risk. And there's a whole bunch we could go in further into that. But the second part of the answer, if I had to pick one thing, it is listening. And this works on both the trusting and the trustworthy side. I don't mean listening in the sense of, finding out the answer to a question. And I don't even mean active listening the way we all talk about that. I mean listening with the objective of making the other person feel heard, feel understood, appreciated, recognized, valued. If you listen to somebody with that intent, in your own mind, you're thinking, I really want to get what makes this guy tick. What's behind that? What's he afraid of? What's going on here? What's in the background? And try to understand so that the other person gets to a point and they say, yeah, you get it. You get where I'm coming from, right? And you're able to say yes, and you have that connection. If I had to pick one variable out of 50, that's probably number one. So there's a two-part answer for you.
And so I'm fascinated by this concept of risk. So can you just dig into that a little bit more, Charlie?
Sure.
The need to be trusted is to take a risk. Is that
no? That
or
the way you get more trusted is you be trustworthy. The way you kick off a relationship, the dynamic of that back and forth between trustor and trustee, is that one person has to take a risk. Now think about trust. It's a funny mixture of the rational and the emotional. The rational part is, what's in it for me? What do I get out of this? What are the odds? What are the probabilities? Okay, I'll go with this one. But trust is not just merely, calculating the odds and doing a spreadsheet. There's a certain element of risk saying, at the end of the day, I don't know this guy. He could screw me over. It could all go wrong. Things could blow up. And at the end of the day, you kind of have to trust your gut and say, I kind of have a good feeling about this person. I think this is going to work out. They're worth taking a gamble on. And you can't even quantify it.
Yeah.
And trust at its essence has both of those.
Yeah.
Both of those components. So, and as I said, the active component is the trustor, the one who begins by saying, you know what, I'll take a risk. I'll phone these people up. I will listen to them. I will pay attention. I will I'll share something about myself that I wouldn't otherwise share. It's an analogous.
That's the risk you're talking about. So, yes. I was going to ask, put yourself you're a salesperson,
yes.
Customer-facing person. You're trying to build a relationship with someone. You're trying to cut through and be trusted. What's an example of an everyday risk that you might take?
Well, let's use sales, as you mentioned. Let's say that there's a client or a potential client or customer. You kind of know them, but things progress to the point they invite you to their house for dinner, you and your spouse to their house. That hasn't happened before. That's new in the relationship. You're kind of kicking things up. What do you do if you're going to? Well, the obvious thing you do is you buy a bottle of wine on the way there. That's understood. That's almost you get credit. You don't get credit if you don't. You get dinged if you don't do that. It's sort of a no-brainer. You bring a bottle of wine. However, that's just jacks for openers. That's table stakes. What if instead you said, it's great we're going over there for dinner at this guy's place. I think they went to Italy on vacation last year. What if we got them not just a bottle of wine, but a really nice bottle of Italian Barolo, and we tied it up with ribbon, the colors of the Italian flag? Might be kind of a nice thing, right? Now you get there. Now, it's risky because, number one, they might be alcoholics. You don't know. Or number two, maybe you messed it up and it was Spain they went to. But you take the risk anyway, and you go there, and probably they'll say, "Oh, that's so thoughtful of you. Wow, that's really," and you get credit for having taken a risk.
So the intent, you get credit for the intent, even if you're wrong.
That's right. And if they are alcoholic, by the way, it's probably not the first time it's happened. And they'll say something like, "That's very kind of you. We don't drink, but we'll save it for our next guest, or maybe you'd like some." Or if it was Spain, you make a joke out of it. Spain, Italy, I always get them confused. Whatever. We overestimate the risks. And so many.
And what about if what if you're a phone-based person and you're doing a call like this, and you haven't got to the point where you're being invited around for dinner, but am I talking about a micro risk here, maybe, or just things you can do in everyday conversation? I'd love your perspective on that.
I'll give you an example. It's a half an hour old. My wife was just on the phone with a customer service person at a radiology clinic, and she escalated it because she wasn't getting satisfaction. So she finally got a hold of some administrator sorting out a bill, and my wife's very good at this stuff. She said, "By the way, where are you from?" And the guy says, I'm in Minnesota. She says, "Oh, is it icy up there?" Well, that's a pun because current events, it is icy and cold. They're going, and ICE, the immigration service, is all over Minnesota right now. So they laughed and chuckled. Yeah, it's really crazy here. It's really icy. And, a moment of connection, right? In the middle of an acrimonious customer service call, everything shifts. You find an opportunity to make it personal. Take a little bit of a risk, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's so important, and it's just so easy not to do. So easy
That's
not to
very
do.
true. It's very easy for us to say, oh, it could go wrong. I shouldn't say that. It's inappropriate. If you never take a risk, you're going to get what you get, which is nothing. Trust
Yeah.
never begins unless somebody takes a little risk. And unless you're willing to wait for the other person to always take the risk, in which case you look afraid, gun shy, and who would trust somebody who never takes a risk on trusting them? So we need to get better at taking little risks.
As you say, this is not rocket science, right?
It's
Like
not
it's
rocket
not.
science. Absolutely.
No, no, it's pretty basic human interaction, but for the reasons we've talked about, we're just not as good at this as
Right.
we used to be.
Right.
And so, Charlie, there's been a lot written about the collapse in corporate trust or organizational trust
Right.
over the past decade or so. What, and I think we've touched on this, but what can individuals do if, through this environment to build trust? I mean, we've talked
Right.
about taking risks, but what else can
Yeah.
you do as a representative of a company where trust is in decline across the board? What are the day-to-day things people can do to kind of mitigate that and cut through?
Right. That's a great question. Again, let me first make a distinction uh, between personal trust and institutional trust. I trust you, Tom, um, and maybe I trust my FedEx driver, or I trust FedEx. But the fact is, when you're dealing with a person, you're dealing with a richer set of components. Like um, I may say I trust FedEx, but if the driver screws up my delivery twice in a row, leaves it in the wrong place on the porch or something, or it's torn or dirty, then suddenly I don't trust FedEx. If, on the other hand, I have a little bit of a relationship with my FedEx driver, I know his first name, he knows my kids, he knows the dog. We've had a few, I like it over here on the porch, not over there, just enough to get a little vibe. Then if he screws up once, I'll say, hey, Joe, what gives? We talked about this. Now, I'll forgive him. And I don't trust FedEx particularly less. Now, it doesn't transfer. Just because I trust the organization doesn't mean I trust the individual. On the other hand, if I trust the individual, the odds go up for trusting the organization. So,
Mm,
long way around for saying, and I have a slightly different point of view than many people on this. I think the best way to create institutional trust, which you're right, is in decline, is operating at the individual level, not at the corporate level. Don't call in the PR professionals and get all over messaging and social media and everything. Instead, make sure that everybody who's customer facing, supplier facing, media facing, everything understands the dynamics of behaving in a trusting and trustworthy way and start behaving that way. Now, imagine if
mm,
you were, it's not hard to do that across a team of 100 people. It's much harder across an entire organization, but in principle, it's quite doable. And it's far preferable if people start behaving that way. It only takes a few months. I mean, imagine if you got an entire, let's say, a 100,000 person organization and wave a wand and suddenly everybody's behaving in the way we've been talking about. How long would it take the entire world to notice that, well, these guys are really different?
mm,
It would not take long. 2 months, 6 months, 9 months maximum, I think.
mm.
Whereas if you just simply bring the PR people in and message the heck out of all the media, it's skin deep. So I'm a big believer that the right answer lies at the individual level. Be the change you want to see in the world, all those kinds of statements. We all underestimate how much agency we have. And you don't need to start at the CEO level either. Any individual who says, well, I do this, but my boss, heck no, you have a lot more autonomy. Your boss is not trying to keep you from expressing yourself in the ways we talked about. Go ahead and do it. And you're very unlikely to get dinged for it.
Well, I think what it sounds like the answer is, authenticity, because I think today the PR company, people, the PR companies, the messaging, the corporate messaging, people are so jaded by that.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
is actually causing a negative outcome,
Yes. Agree.
and so people are really looking for an authentic experience with an authentic person. How do you do that at scale, Charlie? Like, is that just simply training people around a shared set of values and purposes, and then ensuring that they stick to it?
Well, I'll give you two answers and a little story to demonstrate it, if that's okay.
Please, yeah.
One is that leaders need a role model. They forget how important it is, how they behave is such a symbol for everybody else. And the other one is some kind of coherent set of principles that drive your behavior. And if you have a set of principles that are well thought out and leaders who are willing to actually live it, and I'll give you an example. Bill Green, former CEO of Accenture, no relation to me. I was doing some work for them, and I happened to be invited to present this global group right after Bill Green was presenting. And they wouldn't let me in the room while he was presenting. They let me in the room after. So I was there for answering questions. And apparently he was rolling out some kind of new model for corporate governance across. And so I got in the room and some guy raised his hand and said, Bill, this sounds great, but have we yet lined up the incentive structure so that when Harvey over here calls me from Austria, I'm incented to, help him out in the way that you're describing? And Bill Green got up out of his chair. He walked to the front of the stage and he pointed to the guy and he said, I never want to hear that question again from anybody in this room ever. If there's ever a conflict between the incentives and doing the right thing, you do the right thing first and fix the incentives later. Am I clear? Well, 40 people in that room got real clear real fast. But what did he do? He saw him. He could have answered in a bland kind of way. No, we haven't got it yet. We'll catch up. No, he saw an opportunity to role model the principles, what they look like in person. And that's it. Have principles and be conscious of being a role model.
Yeah, the incentives are not what, yeah, absolutely. We do the right thing and then the incentives will follow is really
Right.
the inference, right?
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
As it ought to be, correct.
Yeah. Again, simple stuff that people tie themselves in knots with. So one of the things we've touched on is technology and, the various forms. I talk about this a lot. I remember when I first started in sales, this is 20 something years ago. I had a phone and I didn't even have mobile email.
Right.
So it was literally, I had one option and I was spending a lot more time with customers. Back then I could take them to the game on the weekend and form really personal relationships, and it was simpler. And I sort of characterize it as this: everything went from FaceTime to eyeball time. Everyone went from trying to maximize the time you spend with a client to maximize the time that they spend reading your material. And the problem,
time to eyeball time. I love that.
Yeah. And so then, everyone then started trying to be the smartest company in the room. And what happened was everyone started to sound the same. And so much harder to cut through. But, we're doing you're in Florida, I'm in Sydney. 10 years ago, we would have had to be in person to do this. What are the things that you need to do to build trust online? Because we're all doing more of this. And I think this is so important for the future executive is to really nail this. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, a lot. Gee, I mean, I'll rattle off a few and stop me when we run out of time here. Don't use an artificial background on your Zoom calls. Do like you do. You got books behind you and pictures. The viewer immediately wants, what's that picture of behind him? What's going on there? How come the fruit basket is full today? Yesterday it wasn't. Stuff like that. Don't forget the power that we have to modulate our voices, to raise and lower our volume, to lean in, to lean out. Just pure, even in a two-dimensional screen, those things have a little bit of an impact. Answer questions honestly. I mean, for example, nobody likes to admit they don't know something. Let's go in the sales world, for example. And let's say you're having an initial call with a potential client and they say, well, what do you guys know about this, that, and the other? And the typical answer is, well, we do quite a bit in that. We have clients here. We've done that. We've got a track record. And when the truth is, not much. Well, what if instead you were to say, not much? In other words, I don't know. Everybody's so resistant to saying, I don't know. But we all know that nobody's an expert in everything. You're a liar if you try to pretend you are. Tell the truth. They ask you a question you don't know the answer to. You say, I don't know. And let it sit there. Don't be in a hurry to say, gee, if it's important, I'll find out for you. Of course you will. We know that. We just want to know if you're willing to admit the truth, that you're an imperfect specimen of the human race like everybody else. So, tell the truth. That's one way. Another one, stop me when because it can go on. One is transparency. Again, let's use the sales area, for example. One of the mantras in sales is never mention price until you've established value. because you might scare them off and you want to make sure they make an educated decision. Well, the truth is, everybody on a sales call, the first thing they want to know is, what's this going to cost me? And we push and push and push and try and avoid it and avoid it and avoid it. No, figure out a way to say, look, this feels like a high 6-digit, low 7-digit number to me. Or are we in the right ballpark? I don't want either of us to embarrass ourselves, right? And the answer comes back, yeah, that's about the right range. Good. We'll sort out the details later.
It's a risk.
Yeah.
Because you're introducing it before you've been trained to introduce it, but you're
Correct.
building trust with the client because they're going to appreciate it.
Exactly,
and they're going to
right.
think, they don't want to waste my time. So,
and by the way, that sets you apart from everybody else.
Yeah. I think there's also a great opportunity to take risk at the beginning of every call that you have by just having an off-topic conversation.
Yeah.
I find when I'm on a call online, I am so drawn to the content a lot more. I have this immediate feeling that the person on the other side has less time, doesn't really want to banter with me, just wants the content, and then they want to get off and get on with their day.
Yeah.
But actually, they probably would love a connecting conversation. And so just pausing and taking the risk to sort of ask, how are you? How's your day?
Right.
And having and finding common ground, I think, is something that gets lost on this type of medium.
Totally agree. And by the way, maybe to point out the obvious, you can't just execute a script. You can't say, how is your day going? Because it's obviously insincere. You actually have to kind of mean that, how is your day going? I mean, I'm doing okay here, but I notice you're over in Sydney and the sun's up and it's the middle of winter and what are things, you got to mean it.
Yeah.
The comedian George Byrne once said, the most important thing in life is sincerity. If you can fake that, you got it made. And it's a joke because obviously you can't fake sincerity. Well, same thing with trust here. You got to mean it.
Yeah, absolutely. Charlie, great conversation. I really appreciate it. I think we're coming up on time. My last question is, you wrote a 20th anniversary edition of the book. Is there a 30th anniversary coming up of The Trusted Advisor?
I don't think so. I think I'll be out of steam by then. Possibly working on another book now, tentatively called Clients from Hell, which is a catchy title.
Wow.
Although, as your agent pointed out, if that's all there is just a catchy hook title, it's no good. It's got to be some meaning to it. So we're pursuing it with Clients from Hell and the life lessons that we learned from dealing with them. So we'll see if that book happens.
Great.
That's the idea.
Well, I'll wait with I'll wait with bated breath for that one. That sounds very good. I could probably contribute a few war stories myself.
I'll give you a call later.
Yeah, excellent. All right. Well, Charlie, thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, and look forward to having you on again sometime.
Thank you, Tom. Much appreciated. Enjoyed the time. Thanks.
Okay. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Trust Stories by Relate. To explore more ways to build trust in your conversations, meetings, and teams, visit relate.us. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow, rate, and share it with someone who values building real connections.